Welcome back to another baseball focused video. It's time to talk more MLB draft. We are now within 2 weeks of the 2026 MLB draft, which is kicking off Saturday, July 11th. So we are in the home stretch. The MLB Draft Combine has come and go. So we essentially have all of the player data we can possibly get to evaluate this class. You still have the MLB Draft League going on, still have some summer leagues draft eligible players might be playing at, but for the most part, your day one guys, it's completely done. Everything is in the books. Until then, it's just a wait and see. Continue to find the right ranges for players, place them accordingly. I said it at the beginning of the season, and my opinion hasn't really changed on it now. This is just a super deep class, but at the same time, it's a super tight class as well. You have your top tier, which I consider to be three players at the very top of the class, with Rock Chalowski, Grady Emerson, and Von Lackey. And then from there, you have, I would call slam dunk first rounders, which off the top of my head, I probably only put about 10 to 15 players in that tier. And then from there, there's a vast majority of players that can go anywhere from the comp round of the first round all the way to the third and fourth round. I think that's just how tight this class is. I don't think the talent in this class is as high end as we've had in some recent classes. Like, I don't think anything's going to beat, well, for a while, I don't think anything's going to beat the 2024 class, but this definitely is one of the deeper classes. On my draft rankings, I only have three players that I consider 60 future values: Chalowski, Emerson, and Lackey. A 60 value for me personally is a player I think that their most likely outcome is that they make at least one all-star team and probably a few all-star teams in their big league career. And then from there, I have 11 55 future values, including my 360 future values. A 55 future value for me would basically be what I consider to be an above average regular. An above average regular for me, according to my criteria, would be like your everyday player on a playoff team or your all-star candidate from a non-playoff team. Let's just say I have 11 players from this class that I think will have one all-star team to their resume by the end of their big league career. From there, you jump into the 50 future values. I have 56 50 future values, which that is considered my average everyday regular. That's your player that is getting everyday playing time at the big league level. An average big league regular would kind of be like maybe your strong side platoon on a playoff team or just your everyday player on a non-playoff team. I have 56 players from this class that I think are going to put together an average big league career. To the average baseball fan, that doesn't sound like great by any means. Like, okay, we're producing average big league baseball players, but when you look at the nature of the draft, there's not many drafts that you are getting that many big league contributors from each draft class. So that goes back to my point that this is a very deep draft class. And then from there, you jump into my 45 future values, which I consider to be below average regulars. So still players that are consistently on an active roster, not contributing at an average level, but still getting playing time at the big league level. This would be your short side platoon, bench bat on a playoff team, or just kind of like your everyday player on a non-playoff team, maybe strong side platoon type on a non-playoff team. That's your 45 future value. And I have 94 players total from your 60s all the way down to your last 45. I have 94 players that I think are going to appear in some way, shape, or form on a big league roster for multiple years. This class is super deep. And with the MLB Draft Combine, I still don't think that there has been much separation created within these tiers of the draft. Coming into the season, I kind of had the same sentiment as I had now, and you would hope that throughout the season that some of these players would create more separation among themselves. That didn't really happen. Obviously, you had the top of the class kind of separate itself from your 50 future values down. There's not a ton of separation. I've seen a lot of disparity in rankings. Like I said, there's just a lot of different landing places for a lot of these players, which is going to make draft day very interesting. But enough harping on the current state of the 2026 draft class. We're going to jump into some of these MLB Draft Combine results, highlight some players that I want to talk about. A note on the MLB Draft Combine, it's not that important. A couple years ago, I can't remember the first year of the actual Draft Combine, but I think the Draft Combine was more of an attempt at MLB trying to promote their draft more. Obviously, the NFL draft combine is a massive thing. The NBA has its own draft combine. So I don't think it's a bad thing by any means, the draft combine. I don't think it actually serves the purpose that baseball fans think it might serve. I kind of shared this about the College World Series. Like, I don't think you can have a player go into the draft combine that's maybe like a consensus fifth rounder, and then he puts on a show in batting practice, and now, okay, this is like, now we're talking about this as a first rounder. That just is not the case. Now, it is like the College World Series where maybe players within the same tier can separate themselves a little bit because of their performance at the draft combine, which there is a few players that I think that's the case for this year that had a really good showing. We'll jump into some of those players. But for the most part, I mean, for me personally, and I know like a lot of different evaluators and scouts share the same thing, in-game performance is king. I wouldn't even say in-game performance and results, but your in-game data is king. Like for me, I'm more concerned about like what does your in-zone whiff rate look like in-game against high-level pitching? Like I care more about that than what your exit velocity looks like in batting practice. Does exit velocity in batting practice mean nothing? Absolutely not. All data is good data. It can be used in some way, shape, or form. I do think it is good data that we can use to separate players. On-field performance, on-field data, on-field results is always going to be king. And the MLB Draft Combine, the way I see it, it's more so a chance for players to show their tools off more. And obviously tools are a very important thing. And then also it's just a good opportunity for teams to all get into the same space with players. It's a good place for everyone to be at the same exact time so you can get these meetings knocked out. You can get these physicals knocked out. I know that's a big thing for teams and for players alike. I think the rule is that if a player does the official draft combine physical, that whoever drafts them has to give them at least 75% of their slot value. So that's a big thing. And then kind of on the same lines is you get some players that didn't get to play a lot during the season because of injuries. This is a chance for teams to come out and see, is this player looking healthy? What has the process been like throughout the season, getting them healthy? It's a good thing for the league. I just also don't think that it serves the same purpose that the NFL Draft Combine serves to fans. I don't think the MLB Draft Combine does the same thing. But at the same time, it's also a good chance for people that maybe haven't been honed in on the draft class, because obviously you got a lot of things going on throughout the spring up until the draft is kind of the only thing on the calendar. So it's a good chance for fans in that bucket to get to know some of the draft prospects. And then another point is that most of your very top draft prospects, they don't actually participate in the combine. A lot of them were there. You probably did see a lot of player interviews from the combine, from the players at the top of the draft. They're also going to be there to meet with teams, but they're not going to be on the field participating in on-field workouts. There's just not a reason to do that. Most of the players that we're going to talk about are not guys that I would put in that tier of slam dunk first rounders. There's a few players that we'll get into here that I have not talked about at all this spring, and because of their draft combine results, it's a player we're going to talk about. Now I could say I'm done with my rambling. We can jump into the draft combine results, who stands out. I've got a lot of hitters I want to talk about, so I'm going to jump into some pitchers real quick and knock them out. Ethan Washman is the first pitcher I want to cover, and I did touch on him a little bit in my most recent video talking about my MLB draft board update. I have him ranked 70th on my draft board, which would put him in the supplemental round of the second round. I think he definitely has a chance to move up. I'm going to update my board one more time, and I think I'm probably going to move him up within the top 50. He's kind of put himself in that tier with your prep right-handed pitchers, which for me is the deepest demographic in the class, is the prep right-handers. If you asked me 2 months ago, I probably would have given you 7 to 8 different prep right-handers that I think could have been the first to go off the board. Watchman wasn't even included in that list, and I think he is now. He had one of the best showings at the MLB Draft Combine. He had the highest fastball velocity. He was the only one to hit triple digits. Also, I don't want to spend too much time on this topic, but on the very last pitch of his bullpen, he reached back for triple digits and he overthrew his catcher. And of course, the clip of that one pitch going around Twitter, all of your Little League dads and all of your baseball old heads were just fuming at the fact that this kid was throwing 100 but couldn't get into the zone on one pitch in one video. I just think it's funny that if he had thrown that ball 93 miles an hour with the same result, I don't think anybody would have been saying anything. But the fact that it's 100, you have all these people hopping in the comments talking about how they're not impressed at all because it wasn't a strike. One pitch, mind you, one pitch. So They probably have never seen him pitch in a game. They've probably never seen him live. They've probably never seen any of his other highlights. But because of one pitch, they decided that he's not a good pitcher. So let's just not do that. But like I said, highest fastball velocity in the MLB Draft Combine, only one to touch triple digits. And then he was also really spinning the ball well. I know that his breaking stuff is somewhat of a work in progress. There's a curveball in there. There's a cutter that's been added to the mix. So there's definitely a need for development in terms of breaking stuff, but he definitely could get there because he was spinning the heck out of the ball at the combine. He was consistently running it up over 2,800 RPMs on the breaking stuff. Once he finds a consistent shape for his breaking balls, and if he could develop a slider off the curveball and throw two distinct breaking balls with the cutter in the mix, that's definitely a foundation to work with. And then he also does have a changeup, which is his best secondary. I think for Watchman, I would call it a Seth Hernandez light. There's a lot of Seth Hernandez in there. Watching him throw, the delivery is similar. The movement patterns, the size as well. He's like 6'5", 220, I believe it was. Seth Hernandez at the same stage last year, I want to say it was about 6'4", 190. So Hernandez more projection. Watchman maybe closer to a finished product. I think there's probably still some projection in there. But I mean, the same type of athleticism, the same type of arm talent, same type of power, maybe not the same type of command as Hernandez. Hernandez did have some pretty elite command for his age, which is kind of backed up in pro ball a little bit. But I mean, that's going to happen for really any 19 to 20-year-old getting their feet wet in pro ball. So with that being said, there's definitely a world in which Watchman is the first prep right-hander off the board, regardless of the fact that, his final pitch of his bullpen at 100 miles an hour was overthrown. Ethan Watchman, I definitely will be moving up. He's one of these players I will move up based on his draft combine performance. The other interesting thing about these prep right-handers is I do think it's a super deep class, but I also think there's a world in which there aren't any that go in the first round. And that's just kind of the nature of the demographic, is that teams get cold feet on your high school pitchers. But I do think that there are plenty of teams, for instance, the Braves, in each of my mock drafts, I've kind of expressed the fact that, okay, the Braves have 2 first-round picks, and the Braves have never been scared of drafting prep pitchers with their first pick in the draft. Since they have that 9th overall pick, that's going to be a perfect opportunity for them to maybe underslot a college bat, maybe a college arm, or a high school bat. I don't know if there's going to be any high school bats in that range, unless you can get Eric Booth to fall that far. I don't think Jacob Lombard's getting that far to 9. Maybe take a shot on Trevor Condon up there at 9. I think that Trevor Condon's probably the only prep bat I could see someone buying down on in that range. So I think if they don't want to take one of the high school arms with that pick, I think they probably underslot a college player, and then I think their second pick is the 26th overall pick. That would be the perfect spot for a team like the Braves to overslot one of these high school arms. Like the Padres would be a team picking 21st overall. We know they're going to draft a prep. That certainly could be a prep right-hander. There's a world in which there's no prep right-handers in the first round, despite the fact I still think it's the deepest demographic in the class. Grayson Willoughby, prep right-hander out of Kentucky. Another high school pitcher that was really lighting up the radar gun. I think he was up to 99.9 with the fastball. Another pitcher that fell victim to not throwing strikes in his bullpen, you could probably tell by my view on Watchman, was I don't really care. They're here to show off the tools. There's obviously a much larger body of work than just the singular bullpen at the draft combine. Willoughby was consistently in the upper 90s with the fastball. It's also some funky arm action with a lower launch. So I definitely can see some teams that would be interesting in that alone in the release traits. And then he was spinning a slider up around 2,700 RPMs, I believe, with a bunch of glove side break. He also has a changeup in the mix that has some good velo separation off the fastball. At this stage, I don't think I would put his name in that tier of right-handed high school pitchers that could be the first name off the board, but one I could definitely see going on day one. Gannon Grant, another right-handed high school pitcher out of the state of Indiana, won the Indiana Gatorade Player of the Year. Another arm that was absolutely spinning the heck out of the ball. I think he had the 2 highest spin rates at the combine, and 5 of the top 7, all with the slider, was up over 3,000. Has been in that range throughout the entire spring. Really just a devastating slider. I want to say with some recent footage I've seen of him, he's been up to 20 inches of glove side break, consistently up in that 17, 18 range with depth. So it's like a devastating 2-plane sweeper in a sense. And then the fastball, I know throughout his spring season, he was sitting more lower 90s. But at the combine in his bullpen, he was able to sit more consistently in the mid-90s. And there's obviously more projection on that frame. So I mean, if you're getting him to live in the mid 90s throughout his starts, that you're looking at a pretty good two pitch mix there. He's probably gonna have to develop a few more secondaries for it to be a true starter's look. It's probably more of a reliever's look right now. But I think if a team is confident in his ability to add a few more pitches to the mix, you're definitely looking at a day one arm and kind of cut from the same cloth as Willoughby as well. Kind of some interesting arm action from the right side and also a lower launch. So Gannon Grant, another name to watch on day one. Brady Snow, one more prep right-hander I wanted to highlight. Florida kid and a Gator commit. So it might be a tough sign if you're getting him outside of the top 3 rounds, especially considering he's an in-state kid that's kind of notoriously been a tough get in the draft. Snow is kind of undersized. I think he's only 6 foot 190, but had one of the better showings at the combine. The fastball was up to 98, I believe it was, but another guy that was just spinning the ball. The fastball is a high spin, high carry pitch that he locates well at the top of the zone. His ability to get the ball in the strike zone is among some of the best in the prep class this year. He's just another one of these pitchers that doesn't have as deep a pitch mix as you'd like to see for a prep pitcher that you're going to take in the first round. It's mainly fastball slider mix right now, but the slider spinning up around 2,800 RPMs. And then obviously the fastball has all the characteristics you want to see at the moment: high spin, high carry, velo, location. Logan Redeman is really the only college arm I wanted to talk about here. Your Friday night ace out of UCLA, although he missed really the final 2 months of the season. His last start was April 17th, so he did throw a bullpen at the combine. That was over 2 months removed from his most previous start. Also, on a side note, if Redeman was available in the playoffs, hopefully we wouldn't have been talking about UCLA as a first round exit, but that's beside the point. No more college baseball talk. It's time for MLB draft. So Redeman, he did throw a bullpen, which was probably big for teams because the thing with Redeman was arm fatigue. Honestly, I don't remember if there was an actual injury diagnosis aside from arm fatigue. And this is a guy that has not thrown more than 80 innings in his career, if I'm correct. I think he only threw 58, 59 this year. So definitely going to raise some red flags with some teams. He did come out and throw a bullpen. I know that he was up to 94 with the fastball in season. I think he had hit 99 at some point. So maybe some concern with the velo, but at the same time, I know some of the reviews came back saying that he didn't look like he was at 100%, more like a ramp-up bullpen. He did flash all of his pitch types, which is a deep pitch mix. I still think that there is an excellent foundation there for Redeman in pro ball, but would definitely like to see him get healthy. Seeing him pitch at the combine was certainly a first step. But with that being said, I think that he's gotten to a point where there's going to be a much wider variance of outcomes for him. With it being a weaker college pitching class than recent seasons, I was pretty confident that he was going to get into maybe the top 20 picks because there was probably going to be a team in there looking at the fact that, okay, this isn't a weaker class and we want to capitalize on one of these college pitchers that might not be at our next pick. And for that reason, I thought Redeman was probably going to be a top 20 pick, but now I could see him completely falling out of the first round if there is a serious concern when it comes to the velo. So that really wraps up the pitching side of this. I want to jump into these bats. There's definitely 3 in particular I want to talk about. Starting off with Caden Bogenpole, outfielder out of Missouri State. I have Bogenpole ranked 82nd on my draft board, which would put him as an early third rounder. He did debut on my top 50 in my early season rankings, mainly because he has some of the best raw power in this class, and that was certainly on display at the draft combine. I put him in that top 50 with the hopes that he was going to iron out some of the bat to ball and whiff concerns, which he didn't really do this year at Missouri State. I was hoping playing in a mid-major conference, you would have more of a runway to do that than if you were in a Power 4 conference. And that necessarily wasn't the case. It was a 22.3% in-zone whiff, which was 14th percentile in college ball, down only 1% from last year. It was a 23.5. But at the same time, it was a 100th percentile 90 EV and a 97th percentile average exit velocity. And that was also the case at the combine. He had the 3 highest exit velocities on the week, popped a 119.4. That was the highest one, which was 3 miles an hour harder than the second one, which was also his at 116.4. And then it was a 115.7. Also popped 3 more 114. So obviously the raw power is there. I kind of see him kind of like Brandon Compton last year out of Arizona State. Big physical left-handed slugger. I think Compton also last year was at the top of the exit velocity leaderboard. I think he was selected fourth round, I believe it was. The interesting thing about Bogenpol is it's a polarizing profile because of the swing and miss. I could see the Brandon Compton in him, but at the same time, like at the beginning of the cycle, I called Bogenpol a Jace Laviolette light. Jace Laviolette last year came into the season as the number one favorite. Well, I wouldn't say the favorite, but he was in that range, and then falls all the way to 27 because he couldn't fix the swing and miss. And then also he was just a massive human being that also had really elite athleticism for his size, and Bogenpol is essentially the same thing. Big left-handed hitter, really good athleticism for his size, some of the best raw power in the class. Probably the best after the draft combine. I could see Bogenpol's outcomes anywhere between where Laviolette went last year at 27th overall and Compton, who went in the fourth round last year. So that kind of goes back to what I say with this draft being a very tight class, very muddy. It just creates a wider variance of outcomes for these polarizing profiles like Caden Bogenpol. So yeah, he stole the show in batting practice. It's a BP that you got to go back and watch. Just seeing him effortlessly just drive the ball out of the field there in Arizona. For him to get to the pull side, for him to go backside, the way he was creating backspin off the bat, it was just really impressive BP. You got to see it for yourself. Martin Sheeler, another outfielder that really turned heads in batting practice. Sheeler is a prep outfielder out of the state of Georgia. Had the longest home run on the week. Hit a ball 470 feet. This is a high schooler hitting with a wood bat. Not too often you see a high schooler with a wood bat hitting 470. Was also up to 115 in terms of exit velocity. Only Bogenpol had a higher exit velocity. I would definitely say Sheeler has put himself in that upper tier of raw power within the high school class. I want to say he led the nation in home runs. I could be completely wrong on that, but I think I saw it somewhere. He hit over like 20 home runs at Marist High School in Georgia. Coming into the season in terms of raw power, there was only a few high school players I would have put in that upper tier, like Blake Bowen was one of them, who also had a very good combine. I don't know if I would put Eric Booth up there. I know that he does have some crazy strength, but at the same time, it's like how much powers he can get to because of the swing. But I know that he has posted some pretty elite exit velocities. Bo Lawrence, I might put in that range. Kevin Roberts might deserve some consideration in that tier as well. And then Dominic Santarelli, obviously, I mean, that's the name we're about to get to. He's also in the upper tier. I would say Sheeler is in some pretty rarefied air in terms of raw power in this high school class specifically. I would probably say it's him, probably Blake Bowen, and Dominic Santarelli in the upper tier of raw power. Sheeler, I have ranked 66 on my draft board. Another somewhat of a polarizing profile, a kind of a split camp. You have your top three prep bats. I've already mentioned them. Emerson, Booth, and Lombard are kind of your first three prep bats off the board. There's a much wider range of prep bats from there that could be the first prep bat to go. I think it's probably Trevor Condon. Jared Greenlinger is probably in that conversation. Blake Bowen, of course, I've already mentioned him. Bo Lawrence. Tyler Spangler might still be able to get into that range. On some boards, I have seen Sheeler as the fourth best prep bat. There's some that I've seen him falling into the third round. I personally have him ranked 66th. And when I expanded the board a couple of months ago to 75 players, this was kind of the range I got him into, and he hasn't really moved from there. It's kind of a split camp on the swing. It's like really elite bat speed. That's pretty obvious with the performance he had at the combine. It's very elite bat speed, very elite hand speed. It's a super quick trigger. It's like a mesmerizing open side look. He's got a higher handset, and then there's not much of a load. There's not much bat wrap. The hands, they just fire so fast. I can see in the swing how there would be some swing and miss concern. I wouldn't say it's not a super adjustable setup and approach and swing. I can see him struggling with breaking stuff in the pro level. When you do look at the summer circuit numbers, he was well above average in terms of contact last year. He was 95th percentile in K rate, 76th percentile in chase rate, 83rd percentile in zone contact rate, 89th percentile contact rate overall on the summer circuit. He's obviously put together a track record of being a very well-rounded bat that has only improved in terms of power. Defensively, he's probably a right fielder. I don't know if there's too much athletic upside in there. I know that there's some arm strength in there. And then at that point, you're talking about a right outfielder with potential swing and miss concerns. That's typically a profile teams pass on in the first round. I still do think that there's a scenario in which he does land in the first round. He is a Mississippi State commit, so another tough sign. Martin Sheeler, one of the top bats at the draft combine. Dominic Santarelli is another prep bat I wanted to cover within the draft combine. I wouldn't say he had the best BP. That was definitely designated for Bogenpol, who had the top max EVs. But Santorelli also had the highest average exit velocity, which was 110.9 miles per hour in his BP. I think he had 7 batter balls over 112. He maxed out at 115.1, I believe it was. It might not have been the best BP, but it was a spectacle because this kid, he's built like an NFL fullback. I wouldn't even say an NFL tight end. He's built like an NFL fullback. Just an absolute beast, hitting from the left side, just crazy hand strength. He's already in that tier I talked about among Blake Bowen and Martin Sheeler in terms of raw power in the high school class. He's already maxed out in a sense in terms of projection. And I think if he gets into a pro org and add some more polish to the mechanics, a team can get more out of his swing. You're talking about just some very lethal raw power. There's definitely some swing and miss here. He was 13th percentile in contact rate on the summer circuit. At the same time, it's a very good approach. He doesn't chase outside of the zone very much. He does impact on pitches inside the strike zone. He is a corner prep bat with some swing and miss concerns, which, like I said, is a profile teams typically pass on in the first round, which definitely makes Santorelli an interesting case headed into the draft. He's an LSU commit. I would probably say out of all of the players that I project to go outside of the first round, I don't think he's a first rounder at the moment. Of all the players outside of the first round that I consider to still be day one picks, I probably give him the best chance to get to campus. He's an LSU commit. Notoriously a tough school to sign away from, especially if you're outside the first round. We're talking about Derek Curiel in this class 2 years ago. He was one of the top bats in his high school class. Potential first rounder, gets to campus at LSU. William Schmidt, same class pitcher, potential first round pick, gets to campus. LSU is one of the toughest commitments to sign away from. And I think at this point in the cycle, with the helium that Santorelli has, it might take first round money to get him to pro ball and away from LSU. So either you are giving him an underslot deal late in the first round, or you're popping him in the second or third round and still giving him first round money to get him from LSU. And at that point, I don't think Santorelli's profile is necessarily one teams are going to feel safe about doing that for. I don't know if teams are going to feel safe about taking him in the first round. I don't know if teams are going to feel safe about taking him in the later rounds and giving him first round, second round money. I kind of see this a perfect storm of this guy is getting to campus, which would be a lot of fun to watch. Imagine him in Baton Rouge with a metal bat, and he continues to grow and continues to mature as a hitter. We could be talking about him next year as freshman of the year. So, I mean, at this point, I think it's probably a toss-up whether he gets to pro ball or gets to campus at LSU. Just another BP that you have to watch. I believe he was also lighting up the radar gun in right field in throwing drills. So just an elite athlete for his size. I think he also had one of the better run times. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think I did see that he had one of the better run times at the combine. You're talking about elite athleticism for his size, elite strength. I have Santorelli ranked 97th on my draft board, so that would put him late third round at the moment. So like I said, it's definitely going to take some bonus pool manipulation to get him to pro ball and away from LSU. So Dominic Santorelli, definitely a name to tune into if you aren't yet. Jack Beck is one more high school bat I want to talk about. Shortstop out of Columbia Central High School in Tennessee. Second longest home run distance, right behind Martin Sheeler. Hit one 465. The exit velos weren't as top of the line as your Bogenpols and your Sheelers and your Santorellis. I think he maxed out at 113. One of these prep bats would just a plus frame. I think he's coming in at 6'3", 215. Based off that alone, probably not going to stick at shortstop long term. But yeah, I mean, just a BP that certainly puts his name in that day one conversation. He didn't play much on the summer circuit, which is why his name has kind of popped up as of late. Had a really good spring in Tennessee, and then obviously an excellent draft combine. So definitely a late helium guy. With the power does come some swing and miss concerns, which is typically the case for these right-handed hitters that are kind of in this range. It is a strong arm as well, so you're looking at either a third baseman or a plus right fielder. Along the same lines as Beck, you got Jensen Veras, another high school outfielder out of Florida. Another mesmerizing BP. I know it was a 461 max distance in terms of home runs. And then I think he was up to 114 in terms of exit velocity. Some very alarming metrics on the summer circuit last year. The contact numbers weren't great. Neither were the chase rates. I do know that the reviews on him this spring is that the approach did improve. It helps him get into some of his game power. It is some of the best raw power in the high school class that was on display at the draft combine. Another standout physically, he's 6'6", 220. Definitely a corner outfield profile, but at the same time, definitely a good athlete for his size. Another one of these prep bats that has a very wide range of outcomes in this draft. I know I said I was done talking about high school bats. I did want to talk about two more so on the defensive side, Rocco Maniscalco and Aiden Ruiz. Two very similar profiles. I did talk about Maniscalco in my recent video just a little bit, but Maniscalco had one of the best showings at shortstop in infield drills. I've kind of already mentioned the fact that Maniscalco I had ranked pretty highly early on this season because of the fact that it's essentially the same profile as Eli Willits a year ago. Ultra young for the class. He's going to be even younger than Willits was last year. I think Willits was correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he was the youngest 1-1 of all time at 17.6 on draft day. Maniscalco is only going to be 17.2 on draft day. I currently have him ranked 39th on my board. This is a player I had ranked 10th coming into the season just because of the recency bias of Eli Willis' profile. I did drop him a little bit just because of his consensus rankings and the fact that the reviews on his spring were a little bit all over the place in a sense. I think that his draft combine performance was as important for his draft stock as any other player in this draft because I think it really did solidify the fact that he certainly could go in the first round. I would probably put him in that tier of players, probably a group of about 7 to 8 players. Once he gets outside of the top 3 of Emerson, Lombard, and Booth. So I think there's definitely a world in which he is a first rounder. He had one of the strongest arms over at shortstop. I think he was up to 97 across the diamond. At his age and at his size, that is pretty elite. And then really solid glove work. And then at the plate as well. I think the biggest thing for him was the fact that he was getting into some pretty solid power. He was up to 108 in terms of exit velocity, was getting to it consistently. I'm not sure that's something that evaluators would have had in his bag at this stage. I think that's probably something that they would have projected maybe a year or two down the road. He just turned 17 and he's up there flirting with 110 in terms of max exit velocity. So with Maniscalco's draft combine performance overall, if you account for the glove and for the bat, it was definitely one of the more impressive combine performances. And then Aiden Ruiz, didn't really show anything different than what we expect, but I did just want to highlight him because he's a guy I've been super high on throughout the cycle. He definitely had the best showing in terms of shortstop defense at the combine. He's been the best defender in this class from the beginning of the cycle. A little bit older for the class, and he'll be 19-2 on draft day. Vanderbilt commit, so could be a tough sign. I have him ranked 41st on my draft board. I've said in the past that if I was a team drafting within the first 20 picks, this is a player I would definitely consider. I'm pretty high on shortstop defenders. He's a slam dunk shortstop. There's not many in recent classes that I would put in the same tier as Ruiz. And then you're also talking about a switch hitter with borderline elite bat to ball skills. The power is definitely fringy, but I think that there is probably a little more to come to where he can possibly get to average power. The bat to ball skills are certainly going to be the calling card in terms of what he provides at the plate. But in terms of what he provides overall, it's going to be all about the shortstop defense. High schooler out of Long Island, New York. I definitely just wanted to make sure you know his name because if he gets popped in the first round on July 11th, I don't want anybody saying, who is this Aiden Ruiz kid? I want you to know. I want you to have heard it here first. Aiden Ruiz is definitely one of my personal favorites in this class. Keep his name in the back pocket come draft day. Peyton Bonds is one more college bat I wanted to talk about. Another guy that really put on a show in BP. 6'5", 230, was up over 100 miles per hour in terms of exit velocity 12 times, was up over 110 miles an hour 4 times. This is a player that definitely benefits from the combine. Like I said at the beginning of this video, the combine is big for these players that miss time due to injury, gives them a chance to show evaluators that they are healthy, that they're back up to speed. Peyton Bonds missed the second half of his season at Rutgers, was having a career year. Was looking like he had improved some of the strikeout concerns he had. It's a definitely a far too aggressive approach. It was a 38.5% chase rate in his 36 game sample this year at Rutgers, but he did drop his strikeout rate from 17.4 to 12.7, increased his walk rate a little bit, and then he was above average across the board in terms of contact rates. This is such a unique profile because usually when you get these guys that are high contact, high chase, they're not in the same tier of power as Bond. Like I would consider that Jared Advincula. He was a high chase, but also a high contact guy. But at the same time, that's maybe 40 grade power at best. Peyton Bonds, you're talking about potential 60 to 65 grade power. So it's definitely it's a unique profile that I'm very interested to see how teams evaluate it. I think if you clean up the approach, which I am far more confident in a player cleaning up his approach than I am about him fixing the swing and miss in his game. I think that most orgs would probably share the same opinion as me. You're already talking about some borderline elite raw power. This is another bat that I see a very wide range of outcomes for. I also think that the most important, probably the most important piece to the puzzle here is that his uncle is none other than Barry Bonds. So yes, when you heard the last name Bonds, yes, he is in relation to the all-time home run king. So some bloodlines there, some makeup there. And another one of these position players that, despite the larger frame, definitely moves well for his size. Definitely some very good athleticism for his size. He played center field at Rutgers. He's probably going to be a right fielder in pro ball. Can probably play center field in a pinch, but definitely more of a profile that fits in right field more. So Peyton Bonds, I'm definitely interested to see his landing spot in the draft. With that being said, that's going to wrap up all the players I want to talk about. If there's a player I missed, definitely leave them in the comments. MLB Draft less than 2 weeks away. As of me recording this right now, we are 13 days away, July 11th. Looking forward to it. Going to try to have as much content as I can up until then and as it's going on. So make sure to follow across all platforms, Instagram, TikTok. Follow myself on Twitter. I'll have all that linked below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.